Welcome back, everyone, to another Convicts and Cops episode and special profile. This breakdown will be about Martin Lewis, also known as Crazy Horse, from Clovis, California. Clovis is located east of Fresno with a population consisting of predominantly white and Hispanic citizens. Crazy Horse has a unique story. He was somewhat different than the average convict because he was Native American. Like most young offenders who pursue a life of crime, he was state-raised inside the California Youth Authority system, embraced and recruited eventually by the Aryan Brotherhood. Before I continue with the unique story of Crazy Horse, please allow me to share with you a word from our sponsor. This verse comes from the book of James, chapter 4 and verse 14. Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. How so true is this reminder? There's absolutely no way we know what tomorrow will bring. This is true with you and me. And as you will see, this was so true for Crazy Horse Lewis. Martin Beatty Lewis Jr. was born in Fresno, California on March 24, 1950, and became known as Crazy Horse in the criminal underworld. He and his family lived in the Fresno suburb of Clovis, California. Like many of his fellow travelers, Crazy Horse began doing time as a young man inside the CYA, California Youth Authority. With the middle name of Beatty, it fit him well, as he would soon discover when doing time behind bars. There are two types of people in this world, the predators and the prey. Judging by his course beginning in the CYA, Crazy Horse was determined to be a predator. This character trait and his propensity for violence would find favor with the prison gang community. On June 21, 1968, 18-year-old Crazy Horse Lewis was out on youth parole. He and three other crime partners attacked 19-year-old Dennis Kennedy with jack handles and tire irons near the swimming pool at Pinedale Elementary School on West Spruce Avenue in Clovis. On June 24, 1968, Crazy Horse and one of the other assailants were arrested and booked into the Fresno County Jail. He was convicted of a misdemeanor and sentenced to serve a short jail sentence. In early January 1969, the Fresno grand jury indicted Crazy Horse and 8 other men housed in the Fresno County Jail for sexually assaulting a fellow 29-year-old prisoner between December 27th and December 29th in 1968. Crazy Horse and Robert Raymond Wilson were also indicted for committing acts of sodomy on the victim. The victim testified that he was beaten, stripped naked, bound hand and foot to the sides of a jail cell, had fires lit under him, and was forced to perform sex acts. Unfortunately, during this time, the prison subculture did not see this as homosexual activity. Convicts who engaged in this activity were viewed as predators prevailing over weaker prey. This culture permitted such activity and would distinguish between the aggressor and the recipient, the pitcher and the catcher. If you were the pitcher, you would be considered good with the normal inmate population. With the passage of time, this practice of sexual perversion would fall from favor as convicted felons reinvented themselves and their code of conduct. Sexual predators would be banned by the prison gangs sometime in the mid to late 1980s. Today, there is zero tolerance in place for such conduct, viewed as strictly taboo. Participation in this activity results in targeting the offender to be hit and banishment from the prison environment. To those who apply retroactive thinking and say, if I were incarcerated during those times, I wouldn't participate in such activity. Well, that sounds good, but my answer to that is most of your OG homies indeed were sexual predators. It was common occurrence back then. Here's a tidbit to the Crazy Horse story. So Raymond Wilson, the other man indicted with Crazy Horse on the sodomy charges, was also charged with assault with a deadly weapon when he attacked Manuel C. Argandor with a jailhouse shank for refusing to participate in the sexual assault. His refusal to partake of this action was interpreted by the aggressors as an affront and disrespect to the assailants. Remember, Manuel Agrandor was also an eyewitness to this attack and was invited to get his issue. When he declined, this became their sick justification for attacking him. Given the way convicts viewed such activity, let's consider something here. The sexual assault, together with the torture of the first victim, appears to be more than just men seeking to satisfy some physical needs or breaking in a punk for prostitution. Forcing yourself upon someone has to be a manifestation of rage, whether performed against a male or female. So I wonder if the victim had charges deemed worthy of this caliber of punitive action. Did he commit some violation of the convict code that justified the attack? Regrettably, the record does not reflect the why in this instance, only the who, when, where, and how. On January 17, 1969, Crazy Horse and the 8 other men pled not guilty to the sex perversion charges. A trial date was set for February 24th, 1969. These stories would not be complete without a good escape story. On January 26, 1969, Crazy Horse and 8 other men housed at the jail escaped at approximately 7 o'clock p.m. by cutting through 2 metal screens and bars on a second-floor window facing M Street. The men crawled through the 13 by 15-inch opening, then lowered themselves to the ground using a rope made of blanket. This was carried out directly in front of the entrance to the women's section of the jail. There were only a sergeant and 3 jailers monitoring the 428 inmates at the time of the escape, so they had no clue about the escape. When a visitor to the women's section observed the makeshift rope dangling from the window to the steps of the women's jail entrance, staff members were notified and became aware of the escape. The last escape from the facility took place 5 years prior, and the sheriff accused his staff in that incident of not making their rounds or executing them properly. It appears that may have been the case again in this instance. On January 31st, 1969, Crazy Horse was captured by Fresno police at about 5:30 p.m. at the home of his sister. Police said he was found hiding in a bedroom closet. Crazy Horse was not armed and put up no resistance. On March 15th, 1969, Crazy Horse changed his plea to guilty to 1 count of escape. On March 20th, 1969, he pled guilty to felonious assault and was sentenced to state prison. The district attorney dropped the sexual perversion charges brought by the grand jury due to lack of evidence. More than likely, this was due to the victim not wanting to testify in a public trial. Fresno County jailers had had enough of Crazy Horse and transferred him to CDC custody shortly thereafter. In early 1969, the Aryan Brotherhood was still in its infancy, having formed only 2 years prior. Crazy Horse would be recruited and become one of its earliest members. As a member of the brand, Crazy Horse inherited the enemies of the AB. He also was aware of the CDC prison allies, and he soon hooked up with Martin Ghetto Vargas. Ghetto was his Fresno street homeboy and a member of the Mexican Mafia. Later in years, Ghetto would be convicted alongside Barry the Baron Mills and Daniel D.C. Kavanaugh of the June 1976 bank robbery, which was the largest bank heist in Fresno history at that time. Ghetto was previously arrested on January 19, 1968, in connection with 4 armed robberies of local Fresno businesses. In an armed robbery of a sporting goods store, firearms were taken as part of the loot. When Ghetto was arrested at his home, 2 .38 caliber revolvers taken during this robbery were found hidden in his room. Ghetto was convicted and sentenced to a state prison term of 5 years to life. In 1970, Ghetto Vargas and 11 other new recruits were inducted into the Mexican Mafia at DVI, the Dual Vocational Institution, by Richard Richie Reese from Bakersfield, in the single largest recruitment by one MM member. This was a testament to Richie's standing in the organization and the respect he commanded as one of the 1957 founders of the Mariposa at DVI. These new recruits became known by their carnales as the Young Guns. Beginning in April of 1972 and moving forward, the Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood were aligned against the Nuestra Familia and Black Guerrilla family. During this period, I became aware of Crazy Horse sometime after I was returned to San Quentin in April 1973. It was Ghetto Vargas who advised us that he was looking to sponsor Crazy Horse into La M. Of course, this was a highly unusual situation because Horse was already married to the brand. Crazy Horse approached his AB brothers, requesting their blessing to abdicate his AB membership to join the Mexican Mafia. I cannot tell you who exactly gave the okay, but I can tell you that Blinky Griffin, Spotsburg, Irish Murphy, Danny Kavanaugh, and several other AB guys were at San Quentin during this time. I'm sure the approval had to go through them, and a unanimous vote had to be taken. What I can tell you for a fact is that sometime in 1974, Ghetto raised his hand to sponsor Crazy Horse into the mob, and Crazy Horse was introduced to us as Caballo. Caballo is Spanish for horse. The literal translation for Crazy Horse would have been Caballo Loco, but we still addressed him as Crazy Horse, and I simply called him Horse. Such a move demonstrated the respect these two organizations held for each other at that time, and the close relationship individual members had amongst one another. Unthinkable today, but back during this time, if, say, the MM member was going to make a move on the yard, and the administration was suspecting a hit as well, and were searching known MM members, brand members would pack shanks to the yard for the hitters. The relationship between these two gangs has since changed, and is no longer as strong as it once was. On December 8, 1974, at San Quentin's East Block, MM members Black Dan Barella and Sailor Boy Gonzalez stabbed black convict Marcel Thomas twice in the back and once on the shoulder at 2:30 p.m. The incident was a result of an unpaid drug debt Thomas owed to the MM members inside the adjustment center. Thomas walked into the sergeant's office and revealed he had been stabbed. He was taken to the prison hospital for treatment where he survived his wounds. No weapons were found, no suspects were apprehended. The BGF and the black population didn't see this as business, but as a racial attack against their people, and they began to voice their intent to take revenge by retaliating against Chicano convicts. One of the lessons any seasoned convict learns when surviving inside the concrete jungles of the CDC is to maintain zero rhetoric and learn the art of preemptive moves. In other words, action speaks louder than words. Crazy Horse would find himself somewhere in the midst of the madness that would occur in December 1974. Keep in mind that December represented a festive time, with Christmas drawing near and holiday packages were allowed into the prisons for the convicts to enjoy. You could not find yourself napping when violence was impending and imminent. Crazy Horse sat in on meetings conducted on the San Quentin lower yard, where Max B inmates were allowed to exercise. Although Christmas packages represented the introduction of heroin and other drugs concealed inside the package contents, the MA made a decision to forego the luxury of waiting for Christmas packages in favor of conducting preemptive strikes against the BGF and black convict population. On December 12, 1974, the tensions were reaching a boiling point after lunch when Chicanos and blacks faced off on the yard. Two men from each group left the crowd and met in the middle and talked. When it appeared that a violent confrontation was about to jump off, extra guards were brought out to the gun rails and a lockup order was broadcast over the loudspeaker. The men involved in the confrontation were locked down to prevent any violence. In an attempt to diffuse racial tensions, members of each ethnic group were selected by prison staff. The group was called Climate Control. Ironically, since only men with influence could be influential in controlling the volatile climate, Mexican Mafia members Black Dan Barella and Sailor Boy Gonzalez were chosen to represent the Chicano population. Aryan Brotherhood members Danny Dog Rollinson and Animal Newton were named to be a voice for the white convicts, and Black Guerrilla members Baby Cole and Zaribu Davis represented the blacks. Rather than decrease the temperature levels, the gangs used this as an opportunity to access and distribute prison-made shanks and drugs. They told the prison staff what they wanted to hear, and the lockdown was eased. Caballo was housed in D section under a custody classification known as Max B. It was used as a step-down housing for convicts transitioning from the Adjustment Center, North Seg, B section, and other segregated housing. Men housed in Max B could not walk the main yard, and their privileges were limited. As I mentioned earlier, the lower yard was designated for Max B inmates. While housed in D section on Max B status, Caballo engaged in the tradition of sharing family and other photographs with his fellow M. Carnales. The photo you are viewing was dedicated to me on June 9, 1975, which means we were housed in the North Block on Max B status, and this was 1 month before I was released on parole. It reads, Bro MG. MG stood for machine gun, an old street handle I had acquired. This is my younger days, PSI 65. In 1965, Crazy Horse was at the Preston School of Industries. But hot damn, the hoss be looking plenty young. Along with this go my love and deepest respect. Tu hermano, Crazy Horse, M, for Mexican Mafia. P.S., he continues, I say you got the best hand, Ace. Keep on trucking. On December 19th, 1974, the shit would hit the fan. Caballo and other Mexican Mafia members walked to the South Dining Hall, ready to get busy with the BGF. At 2:40 p.m., Arthur Harris was stabbed to death, and his cell partner, Gary Zaribu Davis, was stabbed non-fatally. It was later revealed that Zaribu had a shank in his possession, but never had a chance to produce it, and I later gently teased him about it in the adjustment center. Black Dan and I had been picked up as the suspects in the 2 fatal stabbings, and referred to the Marin County District Attorney. When Zaribu Davis was released from the hospital, we were celled next to each other in the adjustment center, but of course unable to get to one another. He offered congratulations for beating them to the punch. I asked him what he meant, and he admitted they were fixing to move on us first, but never got the chance. So that explains the shank found on his person after he was hit. Zaribu must have frozen when he and his cell partner, Arthur Harris, were met with steel. I always respected the BGF, and I can tell you there was never any racial animosity in my heart towards any of them. Just a sick love for my hated rivals, if that even makes sense. I was a sick puppy back then, just like them, and we were gang enemies. Skin color had zero to do with our rivalry. In the same Chow Hall incident, David O.C. Aguirre was shot because he would not follow orders to cease his attempts to stab Fox Felix, another BGF convict, inside the Chow Hall. At 3:05 p.m., a second attack on black convicts took place on the lower yard. Truman Nichols was stabbed to death by Black Dan Barella. Caballo was paroled sometime in 1976 thanks to SB 42, also known as the Nedgley Bill, which converted most indeterminate sentences to fixed sentences. Crazy Horse returned to Clovis. On December 31st, 1976, New Year's Eve, he was killed in a car crash. The vehicle Crazy Horse was traveling in lost control and crashed into a disposal truck at the intersection of Herndon and Peach Avenue and burst into flames. On January 4th, 1977, at 2:00 p.m., Caballo's family held services for him at the Clovis Funeral Chapel. Afterward, he was buried in the Clovis Cemetery. Caballo died at 26 years old. 26 years old. I'm telling you, your life is a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. We just never know. Just when you think you have the world by the huevos, bam, ya estuvo. It's done. All I can say to that is be ready, call out his name, good night, and God bless you.